Hello NCU students, welcome to week 6. Okay, only one more week left after this week, so we're coming into the home stretch, but not yet. We have a busy week in front of us this week for sure. We're covering chapters 11, 12, 13, and 14, so that's the rest of the course text. That means 4 chapters to read, 4 quizzes, and a discussion question, and a case study. And oh, by the way, I know you're working on your business analytics project, which is due in week 7. So, but the end is near. Please do not give up. Let's look at the learning objectives for this week. So from chapter 11, we're examining multiple regression and the coefficient of determination. In chapters 12, 13, and 14, we're hitting the whole idea of data analytics and big data. So in chapter 12, we're looking at terminology and some concepts. In 13, we're examining descriptive analytics and some dashboards and the concepts behind those. And then we're lightly reviewing some predictive analytic tools. Now, even though there are 4 chapters to read, all right, this is kind of the good news, the workload is pretty light for chapters 12, 13, and 14. Yeah, there's some quizzes, but it's the reading and doing the quizzes. And there's no case study related to those chapters. There's a case study related to chapters, I think it was 10 and 11 in your text. One of the questions in the case study this week uses the ANOVA statistical tool from chapter 9. So be sure to jump back to week 6's material on ANOVAs. So make sure you look at chapter 9 for that. And then the other question in the case study is from a material that's covered in chapter 11. And it uses linear regression statistical tools and involves multiple independent variables. That's all out of chapter 11. So make sure you check out the material in this week's Attend about multiple regression, and then go back to week 6, check out the material in the Attend section and that on the ANOVA. So speaking of chapter 11, let's hit the high points from this chapter. Back in chapter 10, we learned about regression modeling involving a single independent variable, x, and a dependent variable, y. And we know that from that study in chapter 11 that there's a relationship between x and y, excuse me, where x changes and y changes because of x. So x is driving y. The modeling we reviewed in chapter 10 asked the question, what's the impact on the dependent variable y as the dependent variable x, as the independent variable x changes? And you can see the function on the model on this slide in front of you. It's what we had from last week. But what happens when there are more than one independent variables creating an effect on the dependent variable y? And that's the question that chapter 11 excuse me, answers with the multiple regression model. And you can see the basic model on this slide on page 2 and on page 241 in your course text. And while you can do these calculations by hand, I wouldn't recommend it. Instead, use the regression model equation in Excel under the data analysis tab that's in Excel. And you can see that on the screen in front of you here. Pay close attention to the discussion in section 11.2 about the coefficient of multiple determination in the overall F test that's in section 11.3 of your course text, and then the hypothesis set up and the testing of those hypotheses of the multiple independent variables in section 11.5. My warning is, do not just plug numbers into the regression model equation in Excel and scoop up the net regression coefficients and start making decisions. The coefficient of multiple determination out of section 11.2, which is also reported on the output of that Excel regression model that I told you about, it'll tell you the percentage of the effect the group of independent variables have on the dependent variable x. On the dependent variable y. If the percentage is really low, there's not likely a relationship between the x variables and y. And you can confirm or deny the details of those relationships by studying the F-test results and understanding the individual p-values for each of the independent variables. Again, these data are included in the analysis output for the regression model, so make sure you understand their interpretation. And I've also included videos that will help explain the F-test, the coefficient of multiple determination, and the hypothesis testing and setup for multiple regression modeling. So make sure you check out the Attend section with those. Let's talk about chapters 12, 13, and 14. And somewhere in your career by now, you've heard the term big data, data analytics, data science, or something similar. Chapters 12, 13, and 14 close out our course text with a summary discussion of these topics, collectively known or referred to as data analytics. Now, I have found a number of videos that add some depth to the discussion in our text, and I think that they'll help round out the discussion before you take the quizzes. Now, even though we do not have any case studies for these chapters, don't ignore the reading or the supplemental material in the attend sections. These chapters cover the language and the terminology of data analytics and the basic principles. It's important to know that data analytics can be divided into four major analysis categories. There's descriptive analytics, diagnostic analytics, prescriptive analytics, and predictive analytics. The course text only covers descriptive and predictive, but I've included some supplemental blogs and articles on all four of those categories in the attend section. The one thing to remember about data analytics is that while it uses similar statistical tools that we've been studying, the data is much different, and so the tools are a bit different as well. So you might be wondering how the data is different. Well, our course text and one of the articles I attached as well in the attend section spell out those differences. And briefly, here they are. Velocity, the data that is coming into the equations, if you will, coming into the system, the rate of speed at which it comes in is moving and changing very fast. We're not taking just a snapshot in time of data and then doing some sort of descriptive or inferential statistics on it. The data is continuous in its flow. It's like a stream of fast-moving river. So we need to know how to gather up this continuous stream of data to make some sense of it. And then there's the issue of volume. The data is voluminous. It's large in quantity. It's not a simple list of data. It's complex, interconnected, and there's a lot of it. So kind of like a spaghetti in a bowl that's the size of the big house where my Michigan Wolverines play football. You got this huge big bowl of spaghetti, and not only is it moving and changing fast, but there's a lot of it. And then there's the whole issue of variety or sources. You know, the data changes, it's fast, it's very large, and it comes from all corners of a business's enterprises, of a business's enterprise. Big data comes from multiple sources, multiple places. So when you think of the statistical tools that we've been studying, I think you start to get the picture that calculating statistics and interpreting meaning from high velocity data in large quantities from multiple sources, it's a significant challenge. And this is the problem that the different categories of data analytics solves. I would recommend reading all three chapters, 12, 13, and 14, at one time, before taking the individual chapter quizzes. Because the topic of data analytics is covered in all three of those chapters, and consequently in all three of those quizzes, you need a macro view of the topic before taking on the individual chapter quizzes. Okay, that's it for now. My virtual office hours, again, are on Wednesday evenings at 7 o'clock Pacific time. I'm also available other times if you want to meet up for a quick question via Zoom. I'm praying for all of you. Please don't forget, God is on his throne. He's always been there, and he's always going to be.